This week, Reb Ari Leib Heyman analyzes something which at first may seem pointless, if I dare say, or maybe even immature, but the essence is actually very important because it helps us understand the development of leadership and biblical characters and roles in our Torah and for the Jewish people. And we have a lot to learn from this development in understanding who we are and how we can succeed. So as an introduction, I'll tell you what he does and hold off on trying to disqualify what he does until we actually go through what he does. But what he does is he compares, and there's a reason why he does this. He compares our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to Moses. And he compares and tries to see who's greater. Were our patriarchs greater or was Moses greater? And why? The interesting thing to note, and this I'm adding, is that even if we were to say that our patriarchs were greater than Moses, it was Moses himself who was handpicked by God to be the messenger to deliver the Torah to the Jewish people. Okay, so this is what he's going to do. Now let's go ahead and do it. Take a look at your screen. We are at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, the second verse. This is Exodus chapter 6, verse 3, and it says as follows: Va'era el Avraham el Yitzhak vel Yaakov bekel Shaddai, u'shmi Adonai lo nodati lahem. God says, I've appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with the name of the Almighty, but with the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei I did not become known to them. The Reb Leib quotes a midrash. This midrash observes a contrast or a juxtaposition, rather, between the end of last week's Torah portion and the beginning of this week's Torah portion. At the end of last week's Torah portion, God is left, we leave off the Torah portion with Moses actually complaining to God. Let me show it to you. Chapter 5, last verse, verse 23. Moses says to God, Ume'az bati el Paro, and since I've come to Paro, ledaber bishmecha, to speak in your name, Hera la'am hazeh, he has harmed the people, ve'atzel lo itzalt et amecha, and you have not saved your people. What happened? Moses came and said, God sent me to let his people go. Paro tells him, in other words, go fly a kite. It's not happening. I don't know who God is. And these people, these Jews are my slaves. But he didn't just end it as that. He actually intensified the slavery. What he did was he told them that they have the same quota of building to produce on a daily basis, but they also had to make their own bricks. So imagine they were already full to capacity. They were already overworked, overloaded. But now we're not even giving you the finished materials to do your work with. We're giving you the raw materials, and now you have to go and form those bricks in order to get your work done. And the Jewish people were suffering tremendously. They even came back complaining to Moses and Aaron, saying, why did you meddle in with our business? Leave us alone. And this is when when Moshe Rabbeinu goes to God and says, since you've sent me to Paro, it's only made stuff worse for the Jewish people. Reb Leib quotes the Midrash. The Midrash says, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, you know, I've appeared to the patriarchs, to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov many times, and I never even revealed my name to them. And they've never questioned me, nor even asked me for my real name. In contrast to you, Moses, God tells Moses, you asked me from the beginning, right by the burning bush, last week's Torah portion. You asked me, what's my name? And I told it to you. And even after revealing myself through, telling you what my real name is of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, you still complained to me after you went to Paro. So Reb Leib says it seems like there's a double knock on Moshe Rabbeinu. This Midrash is evident that our patriarchs were greater than Moses, because our patriarchs did not request Hashem to reveal his true name, and also they did not come and complain to God. So Reb Leib now goes on to explain the fundamental difference between our patriarchs and Moses. And he says that there are really two parts of the basis of the formation of Bnei Israel. He says the patriarchs, again, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are like the heart. If we would compare them to a body part, they're compared to the heart. And Moses is compared to the head. The heart is independent of the head. However, the head is completely dependent on the heart to continue to pump blood and have oxygen being transmitted to the entire body. I'm not saying that a person can live without a head, but the head doesn't necessarily give anything to the heart. Rather, the heart is what provides for not only the head, but for the entire body. Now, having said that, Reb Leib sidetracks for a moment and he explains a piece of Talmud, a Gemara, that maybe wouldn't make sense to many of us. The Talmud tells us of a halacha that when a person puts on tefillin, when a man dons tefillin, we first don the tefillin shel yad, the arm tefillin, and then we put on the head tefillin, right? Us men, we do this every day. We know. First the arm, then the head. Why? Well, let me tell you. Take a look what the Talmud explains. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 8 says as follows, Ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben enecha. You shall bind them upon your hand, and you will have these ornaments between your eyes. The Talmud says that you shall first bind them on your hand, and the totafot, the ornaments, which is in plural, should be between your eyes. Explains the Talmud that you shall tie it on your hand. Your hand tefillin should only be put on before the tefillin of your head. Meaning when your head tefillin are on, it means that you have your group of tefillin, your pair, already on. So now the Talmud goes on, so that's pretty straightforward. But now the Talmud goes on to say, when you take off your tefillin, you don't take off your arm first and then your head. You first take the head tefillin off and then the arm. Why? Shouldn't you take it off in the same order that you put it on? No, because the verse says V'hayu letotafot ben enecha, that the whole time that your tefillin are on your head, it should be on as a pair, meaning your arm tefillin should be on as well. Explains Reb Leib, it makes perfect sense, because the head depends on the heart. The heart does not depend on the head. That means the tefillin shel rosh, the tefillin that we put on our head, that is dependent on our heart. The tefillin we put on our arm, specifically opposite our heart. So our heart really is what provides for the head, and therefore our head tefillin should be removed first, and then our tefillin shel yad, then our tefillin of our hand. Having said that, and that's a little sidetrack, but it still proves the same idea. Our patriarchs were at a level of Emunah which nurtured the Jewish people just as the heart supplies life to the entire body. Their level of Emunah is evident from the following verse in Nehemiah. In Nehemiah, this is a verse, chapter 9, verse 8. We actually read this on a daily basis in our morning services. Umatzati et levavo ne'eman lefanecha. And you found his heart faithful before you. We're speaking about Abraham. V'charot imo ha'berit. And Hashem made a covenant with him. Latet et eretz ha'kna'ani v'chiti v'amori v'prizi v'yevusi v'gigashi. To give him the land of the 7 nations. Latet lezarot, to give to his descendants. Vatakem et devarecha ki tzadik ata. And you keep your words, for you are righteous. It's evident, especially from the beginning of this verse, that Avraham And so too Isaac and Jacob were all at a very high level of emunah, high level of belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In contrast, Moses is compared to the head because, again, at his very high level, he had a minor deficiency in comparison to the Avot because of his questioning God for his name and for how is it that it got worse for the Jewish people since he went to Paro. Now, Leib segues onto a concept in prayer, which ties in beautifully. Prayer is referred to as avodah shebalev, which means service of the heart, right? More important than lip service, what God wants is God wants us to connect to Him emotionally, psychologically. He wants us to really bind ourselves to Him. And how? Obviously, based on our concentration, our kavanah, as we call it. It seems that since Moses, says Reb Leib, displayed a deficiency in his emunah, at least early on, this dropped his level to a lesser level than the patriarchs. And therefore, his prayers weren't always accepted by God right away. If we look at the patriarchs, their prayers were always heard and accepted. Yes, even though they waited maybe many years to have children, but at the end, everything they requested and wanted was given and granted to them. For this reason, explains Reb Leib, if we look at our Amidah, our silent prayer, it is only our three patriarchs which are mentioned at the beginning of the Amidah. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Moses is not mentioned because Moses' level was not at the same high level as our patriarchs. Again, he is proving that the level of the patriarchs' emunah, their belief in Hashem, was stronger than Moses's. I have what to say on this. Let me just finish what Reb Leib says first. The truth is, Reb Leib says, that Moses is mentioned in the Amidah, but not every single day, only once a week, Shabbat morning. Shabbat morning, after we finish the first three blessings, we start with Ismach Moshe b'matanat chelko, ki eved ne'eman karata lo. We mention Moses at the beginning of the Shabbat prayer in the morning. Why? Why only then? Shabbat, we know, is the seventh day of the week, explains Reb Leib. The seventh day of the week was the purpose of creation. Shabbat vaynafash. Hashem created the world in order that we can enjoy from it. In truth, the world was supposed to be in an everlasting Shabbat. If Adam and Chava would not have sinned and eaten from the tree of knowledge, we would have been in this everlasting state of Shabbat. However, again, Shabbat, the seventh day, was the purpose of creation. If you count from Avraham, the seventh generation from Avraham is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, explains Reb Leib, was the purpose of Avraham Avinu's very creation. The reason why Avraham came down to this world was for Moshe. Why? So that Moshe can bring the Torah to the world, can enlighten the world with a new level of morals and ethics, the ones which God wants humanity to abide by. This was the purpose of Avraham Avinu's creation. So again, at the stage we are at now is that the patriarchs were greater than Abraham. The patriarchs were greater than Moshe Rabbeinu because of their level of belief in God. Elsewhere, we may see a difference. We may see that Moshe really was greater than our patriarchs. The Talmud in Masechet Chulin, page 89a, tells us that there was a great height that Moshe and Aaron had, which even superseded Avraham's. Why? Look what the Torah tells us about Avraham. By Avraham, in Genesis chapter 28, verse 27, it says, Vayan Avraham bayomar, and Abraham said, Hinena ha'alti ledaber el Adonai, ve'anochi afar va'efer. He says, behold, now I have commenced to speak to the Lord, although I am dust and ashes. Abraham refers to himself as dust and ashes. Let's take a look to how Moses and Aaron refer to themselves. It says over here in Exodus chapter 16, verse 7, Uboker uritem et kvod Hashem b'shemot lonotchem al Hashem, v'nachnu ma kitalinu alenu. They say, what significance are we that you make the people complain against us? Moses and Aaron refer to themselves as, what are we? What significance are we? Basically nothing. So the Talmud tells us that in essence, that which Abraham said about himself was not as great as Moses and Aaron, because at least Abraham was dust and ashes. But Moses and Aaron says, we're nothing. What are we? There's another midrash that tells us that we know that Moses is referred to in the Torah by God himself, that he was the most humble person to have ever lived. Take a look at Numbers chapter 12, verse 3. Ve'aish Moshe anav me'od. And the man Moses was exceedingly humble. Mikol ha'adam asher al penei ha'adama, more so than any person on the face of the earth. The Midrash has a dispute. Does this include the patriarchs or exclude the patriarchs? Meaning, was Moses even more humble than the patriarchs or not? There's a dispute. The Tana Kama, the first opinion in the Midrash, tells us that this excludes the patriarchs, meaning the patriarchs were more humble than Abraham, was more humble than Moses. But Rabbi Yossi says, no, Moses was even more humble than the patriarchs. Reb Leib now goes to understand, it seems clearly from the Torah that Moses was more humble than anyone else in the world. It's what it says, black on white. How can one opinion say, excluding the patriarchs, meaning the patriarchs were more humble than Moses? Reb Leib looks at the context of those two verses, meaning of that which Moses says that he is, what significance am I? And Abraham saying, oh, I'm just dust and ashes. And basically the context of those verses, of those statements, really sheds a new light on what exactly was going on. So let's take a look first at Abraham. Abraham said he was just nothing but dust and ash. He was speaking to God, and he was negotiating with God to save the city of Sodom. Do we remember that back in Parashat Lech Lecha? Parashat Vayera. He goes and he's negotiating with God. There's 50, 40, please, 10, at least 10. There was nobody. But he was telling him, what am I? I'm only but dust and ashes, and I'm approaching and I'm speaking to you, Hashem. Why would he refer to him as that? Because there's a tradition, as Reb Leib says, that a person is supposed to answer an individual in the same way that they have painted the picture and that they have stated it out. Meaning, God refers, take a look, Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. God refers to Adam while he was cursing him. He refers to him as Bizat apecha tochal lechem, from the sweat of your brow will you eat bread. Ad shuvecha el adama ki mimena lukachta ki afarata ve'al afar tashuv. You're going to go back to the earth because you are dust and you come from dust, meaning you come from dust and you're going to be returned to dust. So what Abraham was doing is a very respectful thing. He was coming to God and saying, God, you referred to us as dust. So I'm coming to you as nothing but dust, which was in that way, at that time, the most humble way for Abraham to come to God. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon HaKohen, in contrast to Abraham, they were not speaking to God when they said, but what significance are we? They were in front of the Jewish people. The Jewish people came complaining to them that the situation of of them leaving Egypt is worse than them being in Egypt. They come out, they're stuck in the desert, they got nothing to eat and drink. They come complaining. Moshe and Aaron say, what are we? What significance are we? We're just humans, just like you. We're just messengers of God. It would make no sense for them to say, oh, we're just dust and ashes. No, on the contrary, it was very appropriate for Moshe and Aaron to refer to themselves as nothing at that moment. So in conclusion, Reb Leib is saying that both Moshe and Aaron, as well as Avraham, answered appropriately based on the situation in their most humble way. So Reb Leib ends off by saying, it's evident from most of the sources that we quoted that the patriarchs were greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because of their great level of Emunah. Therefore, they're referred to as the heart of our nation. The heart of our nation is Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Moshe, at his high level, he lacked in some way of that Emunah, and therefore he's not referred to as the heart of our nation. He is referred to as the head of our nation. Now, even though this may be painting a negative picture of Moshe Rabbeinu, we have to remember that Moshe Rabbeinu was the only prophet to have ever lived that was able to communicate with God the way we can communicate with each other, the way we can speak to one another and reply to one another. Every other patriarch was sedated. They were sleeping. It was a dream to them when they had prophecy, when God was speaking to them. Moshe Rabbeinu was up. So on certain ways, yes, our patriarchs were greater, but they were, again, the initiators. They're the seat, the heart of our nation. Moshe Rabbeinu was judged on a very stringent and high level. He is referred to as the head, not the heart. The head which depends on the heart, not vice versa. But his level of prophecy supersedes any one of our prophets, and we have to remember that. It is also very interesting to note that it's only after Moshe Rabbeinu was able to build upon the heart of our nation, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he was selected as the messenger from God to deliver the Jewish people the Torah. So I look at this whole explanation of Reb Leib as teamwork. As teamwork, that Moshe Rabbeinu was building upon the foundation of our avot, of our patriarchs, in order to fulfill his mission. His mission of taking the Jewish people out of Egypt, his mission of giving them the Torah, and as well as delivering them to the entrance of Eretz Israel in order that they can continue on their journey, which we've spoken about many times along why Moshe did not enter the land of Israel. But the way I look at this is that, yes, our patriarchs have their tremendous merit, possibly even a greater merit than Moshe in the level of Emunah. Because again, they didn't see miracles, they didn't see open miracles, our patriarchs, and they still had the level of Emunah which was unshakable. Moshe Rabbeinu saw outright miracles. He spoke to God, God spoke to him while he was up. And he still in one way complained to God and questioned God and asked him for his name. At his high level, he is referred to as the head, which is dependent on the heart, dependent on our patriarchs, which I think makes perfect sense chronologically, that the heart of our nation is our patriarchs, that's the nucleus, and then everything else is derivatives. The next level is the head, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, and so on and so forth, all the way to all of us. So I think this is a tremendous lesson to us all, that we cannot overlook the importance of Emunah, the importance of strengthening our belief and trust in God. It's something which, in many ways, sets the level of an individual. Based on how much they believe in God, is how either high or opposite low they are in their spiritual status. Now, of course, you may say, well, all that really depends on if a person is quite observant or not, is based on how much they fulfill. Do they fulfill mitzvot? Do they not fulfill mitzvot? Do they learn Torah? 100%. But what determines all of that is their belief, is an individual's belief. Because the more you believe, the more you want to do. The more you believe, the more you subscribe to. You subscribe to more and more mitzvot in the Torah, and more time of learning Torah and furthering your knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah. So in essence, a barometer of a person's level of spirituality, commitment to God and Torah is based on their emunah. And I would highly suggest that a person read up on the topic of emunah. There are so many books I could refer to. You could reach out to me. So many books on emunah in many different languages that you can read to strengthen your emunah, to start pondering upon the belief of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's also great storybooks, books of hashgacha pratit, of divine providence, which are outright miracles that strengthen a person's emunah when they see in an outward way, in an open way, how great and how amazing all of the calculations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are, whatever those that we can actually understand. So again, I think this message of the book of Exodus, and especially the beginning of the book of Exodus, with the whole idea of Moses coming to Paro and asking to be freed, to free the Jewish people, and the 10 plagues are all there to strengthen the emunah of the Jewish people. Right? Hashem could have easily, in one plague or no plague, or just a flick of the finger, taken all of the Jewish people out of Egypt in no problem. But no, he did not one plague, not two, 10 plagues. These 10 plagues, in as much as they were as a punishment to the Egyptians for overdoing their torture to the Jewish people, it was more importantly, as our sages tell us, for the Jewish people to see God's might and God's strength, and to instill in them an unshakable emunah, belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they can pass down from generation to generation, all the way down to us in 2021. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And at this time, if anyone has any questions, you are able to unmute yourself. Isaac, I see you quickly hitting the unmute button. Go.
If anybody has it before me, it's okay.
No, you have kidima, you have a chazaka. It's you.
The part about the names of God. You expand how did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew the other name and not this one. And then I recall seeing that name before Moshe. So that name was there before, but maybe wasn't applicable to. I'm still having difficulties understanding the part about the name.
Okay, so based on the Midrash, the name of Shin, Dalid, and Yud was one which was revealed to our patriarchs, as you said. But Yud K Vav K was not.
But it was there before. I've seen it before.
Of course, it's in the Torah, but the patriarchs did not identify God with that name. That was given to Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it very important for Moses to find out his name?
Very good question. Why did Moses even ask? Very, very good question. Isaac, from now on, we're going to give your wife the first question, not you.
Okay.
So that is a very good question. Why did Moses even ask God for the name?
Yeah, why?
Because he knew, and there was a tradition, that the Savior, the Redeemer for the Jewish people, will actually come to the Jewish people and tell them, like he did at the end of last week's Parashat, that God sent me, and they will ask him, what's his name? And he shall respond the name that they will all understand. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu asked for the name. Now, really, he shouldn't have asked. Hashem would have either given it to him without asking, whether through divine inspiration or clearly telling him. But at his high level, it was a lack of emunah that he, number one, asked for the name, and then complained how come it got worse for the Jewish people.
Wow. Thank you.
Very good question. Amazing question. Okay, David, I see you have a question.
Yes. So last week you mentioned that the Levim were not enslaved because they were from the beginning learning, and they were not involved in a mundane day-to-day life, so they never got corrupt, if you can say.
They never got dragged into the scheme.
So told Moshe, pick up the Levim, and we're just gonna go. Why retrieve the people who forgot the name of Kadosh Baruch Hu, who didn't follow any of the laws, who didn't basically forget who they are? Why bother to retrieve all those people where you had already good people there, if Moshe came and said, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to me and he said, it's time for us to go. And they wouldn't believe, they wouldn't challenge him, and then would have said, okay, let's go. Why
Okay.
pick up everybody?
Okay, that's a good question. So there's a couple ways to answer it. In one hand, we can easily answer that what purpose is there of having only leaders if there's no constituents, no nation? It's evident that the tribe of Levi primarily were leaders, and they were of good influence. So to have a small number of people leave Egypt is not the promise that God gave to our patriarchs. It was that the nation will leave, meaning even if it's not every single person, as we know, only 20% of the Jews actually left, but at least the representation from each and every tribe, that's a real exodus. There's no victory in the strongest bunch minority surviving a war. I mean, okay, they're the strongest, obviously they'll win. What's great about a hero, about a true victory, is saving others along with you. So it's also like the idea in war that you don't leave your men down, or you don't leave your men behind. We bring everyone with us. At least we try to. We at least give them the door to. If they put up a fight and they're stubborn, so then you got to save yourself. But the initial is to go and to bring everyone out along with.
Okay. I think I heard something very unique about this, and it was related to Sukkot, that says that you have to have the Lulav, you have to have the Etrog, and you have to have the Hatasim, and it says like, okay, why all of them? Because they all represent one part of the aspect of the Jew. There's going to be the one who is the one that learns and so on. There's going to be the one that looks for pretty things, and it's going to be the one who really doesn't do anything. But they all together, that's what we shake the lulav. There's the Rasha, the Benoni, and the Tzaddik have to be combined in order to be Kol Israel. Otherwise, there is no Kol Israel.
Exactly, 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. Next week,
I just remember something
class.
about. I'm pretty sure I heard it from you.
No, but you're 100% right. Hashem wants all types to serve him, all types to come close to him, all types to recognize him. Very good, beautiful.
All right.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Rabbi.
Isaac, okay, go.
Back to last week. Something that stayed in my mind, and I screwed up the Shabbat table. My grandkids killed me. Everybody had 6 children, but not the Leviim. Now, Moshe and Miriam, there's only 3 of them, Aaron. So, but I was also told by my grandkids, who are very smart, that, well, the parents got divorced and then they came back and what? Okay. How about the rest of the Leviim? Also, they didn't have 6 children, and if not, why not? That was the question they asked me.
Okay, so it's the same answer as we said. Great question. We said the tribe of Levi was not oppressed. They were not enslaved. It was only the tribes that were oppressed and enslaved, tortured. Literally, they had hands around their necks. They were up against the wall. So therefore, they gave birth 6 at a time. But the tribe of Levi was not like that. So they only gave birth 1 at a time.
Why is that?
Why is that? That is because, let's take birth away. Let's take sextuplets away for a moment. Normally speaking, when a person is in a challenging position, it's a do or die position. Very often, more often than not, they find from within. They muster up strength and power, sometimes physically, sometimes mentally and emotionally, to fight through this battle that they have, this obstacle, and they surpass it. So the 11 tribes, they were up against the wall. They were suffering. They were fighting for their survival. Because they were getting choked and they were tough, they had it tough, therefore, that popped out 6 at a time for the women. But when it came to the Levi'im, they were not suffering at the same degree. Definitely not. So therefore, they just had 6 at a time. Someone just put in, there's also a Midrash says it wasn't 6 at a time, it was 60 at a time. But let's just stay with 6 at a time for this conversation.
Something to ask, Rabbi. I have something to ask.
What, did I answer you, Isaac?
Was that?
You got the answer?
I got the answer, but I'm still missing something. I don't know what it is. I have to be one up again with my grandkids.
Okay, fine.
Question. Especially that they were oppressed and working hard, like you said, and now they're having 6 children or more. Isn't it like more oppression for the women? And they also were slaves. How did they handle having so many kids and being slaves?
So
that's worse.
Okay, good. So the fact that they had children, many children, you have to understand, children are a legacy. And as hard as it is to raise children, it is the pride of a parent to have children. Now, this is not taken away from the pain of childbirth, pregnancy and childbirth. That is definitely a huge amount of pain. However, it is evident that the pregnancy and especially the delivery of the Jewish women in the time of Egypt when they were enslaved was miraculous. They were able, the women, can you imagine? I'm sure you've given birth before, right, Mrs. Capuano? Right? Can you imagine giving birth all alone? If I gave you a room and I said, you go give birth. Is it possible? Impossible. Imagine you had twins and I told you give birth alone. Is it possible? No. The women used to give, the Midrash says they used to give birth to the 6 children out in the fields alone, with no midwife, with no doctor. We said when Shifra and Puah came and the angels were helping them. They were feeding them honey and oil. Very good, helping me in the chat, right? It was definitely a miraculous experience. Okay? Now to the comment that was made in the chat that women were not slaves, the men and women were both slaves. They were all enslaved. The way they used to enslave them is that the women were enslaved to do men's work and the men were enslaved to do women's work. It was also a psychological game. But nevertheless, even though they were going through this oppression and this suffering, there was a tremendous amount of help and miracles that was being taken place and given by God.
My God, yeah, that's the only answer.
6 at a time, how many times? That's the other question.
A lot.
How many? 6 at a time? Okay, fine. How many times were they able to have 6 at a time? How many kids did they have altogether?
Yeah, every year, no? What do you think?
100 kids at a time.
Listen, it says, listen, you have to understand, when the Jewish people came down to Egypt, they were 70 people, okay?
Right. Yeah,
within less than 200 years, okay? Already, let's calculate it at 140. At 140 years, I'm taking 80 years from off the end, right?
Yeah.
Already at 140 years, around then, they were more numerous than the Egyptians who populated the land of Egypt. How do you say that?
Incredible.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
They were all over the place. They were swarming, the Torah says.
Wow.
So they definitely had 6 at a time every year, every woman except for the Levi'im. Maybe they had it every 9 months, right? So that means every 3 years you got an extra round in.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Bizrat Hashem will help us to strengthen our emunah, belief in Him, trust in Him, and that Bizrat Hashem will be able to have the great merit to pass on the lessons and concepts of emunah to our children. We always have to speak emunah to our children. We have to share stories of emunah, personal stories that we read and that we hear about, because that's the only way they will also live a life of true belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of the week. Shabbat Shalom.